All right. Good evening, everyone. It is such a privilege to be back again. We don't do these live sessions on a specific schedule. We've actually just had the privilege of kind of making time for them as the opportunities come up. And tonight, I'm very happy that we have another chance to share another testimony with you. It is a privilege for the week to end in this way. For us, the week is very quickly coming to an end, and it is a real blessing to just slow down a little bit for the weekend and have a break. So I want to wish you a happy Sabbath if you are watching from somewhere where Sabbath has already arrived for you. For us, we're going to be starting the Sabbath this evening with a special guest who certainly has had a number of interesting experiences, and her life story is one that we are happy to be able to talk about tonight. Susan, very welcome, and thank you that you have joined us this evening to share a little bit about your own story. I know that sharing these things sometimes is not all that easy, but we are grateful that you've been able to come and chat with us tonight.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
So we're going to dive straight into sort of what we're going to be speaking about. And I thought maybe I'll just give our viewers a little bit of a rundown about what we're going to touch on, and then we'll start from one into the next. We're going to go all the way back to a number of years ago, and I'm going to ask that you give us a bit of background as to what your general routine was, what your life kind of looked like a few years ago. It's more or less 11 years ago that we're going back, right? Have I got my timeline
Yes.
correct? So
Yes.
you will be able to share with us what life looked like at that stage, what you were doing, what your routine was like, and maybe what your general health habits were at that point. And then we're going to share with our viewers a little bit about what started becoming a little bit of a problem to you, what the symptoms were that you started struggling with, some of the events that led up to that and may have contributed to that. And then towards the end, we would like to just hear a bit more about your particular experience of what things were that you changed and what the impact was on your health. So maybe I can hand over to you to start off with us, going all the way back to the 11 years ago, and you can give us a bit of a rundown. I might interject here and there just to ask you some questions, but you can give us an overview of what life was like all the way back then.
Okay, cool. So yeah, a lot happened, but I will start with where my serious pain point was 11 years ago. Me and my new husband actually went on a sabbatical after I sold my house, and we toured a bit through some of the African countries. And there I actually developed a serious stomach ache. And why I say that was actually my turning point is because I actually did have symptoms before that, but because this pain point isn't that serious, you actually, and you're also very used to the type of things because they actually also happen very gradual. But the stomach ache that I actually developed was very, very bad, and I really felt that I couldn't cope with it. I wasn't comfortable to go to a doctor in those countries, so I just um, decided to wait till I was in South Africa. But when I look back, I actually had quite a few things that was already going on. I went into very early menopause at 40. I had severe pain in my hands. It was actually a very big concern for me at that stage because I was at that stage, had a big business. I was making wedding dresses. I had a lot of people working for me, and you need your hands for that type of business. Even if you've got people that do all the sewing, you need to do the fitting. And my hands was actually very, very sore. And yeah, but there was other symptoms. I had lots of headaches, like almost every night after work, I would take some headache medication, would get in a bath, hot bath, and then after the bath, I would be okay again, ready to go out and do the next thing. And I actually thought that was normal. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. Many years prior to that, every time when I had a cold or a flu, even my son, I would go to the doctor. I was on many courses of antibiotics. I never thought that I even had to look at my diet. I can't even tell you what I was actually eating because I wasn't actually also not cooking.
Yeah.
I know that we were doing lots of takeaways, and I did choose relative healthy options, which I thought I would have, like at the fast food restaurant, I would have like a chicken wrap or a chicken salad. But if you really ask me, like now, I can actually tell you what I've eaten this week, but when I look back, I can't actually say because it wasn't important for me, the quality of the food.
Yeah.
And I would eat lots of sugar. I was actually drinking lots of coffee. I was working with brides. So in between every appointment, I actually had a cup of coffee with
Mm,
sugar, at least 2 teaspoons of sugar with milk. So if you add that up to 10, 12 cups a day,
mm,
that adds up to quite a lot.
yeah.
So very healthy, although I didn't see myself as unhealthy, lots of cakes and sweets and yeah, all these things.
Yeah. If I can maybe jump in, just pointing out a few things from what you've mentioned now, and apologies for the background noise. Somehow, every evening at sunset, the dogs in the area start howling at each other, so there's a communication going on. Um, you mentioning a few things that I think are maybe just important for us to point out in this discussion, and especially for our viewers who are watching from different areas, people living in different setups, doing different kinds of jobs. There were key things that you mentioned. Number one, I think, just to point out that you were, if I understand correctly, busy with a home business. It was your own business, but when you have a
Yeah.
business and when you have people working for you, there's an implied stress that goes along with that. So I would
Mm,
assume that there's a fair amount of stress that was kind of the baseline, not just
yes.
from time to time, but that you kind of hover at and you idle in stress mode all the time, just about. So there is that factor as well, and then obviously there are some lifestyle things you can remember. Your caffeine intake, for instance, your sugar intake, you can remember. But like you also mentioned, one is not always exactly aware of what you're eating that is unhealthy, because in your mind at that stage you were kind of doing the best that you can and the best with what you know how to do. But there are these symptoms that start popping up. Now, before you jump or before you continue to the next section, also something else that you mentioned jumps out at me, because it is exactly the same as what one of the previous people mentioned who we did an interview with, that when they think back, they realize they didn't, for most of the time, notice that they were actually unwell. It is only
Mm,
when they started making changes and started getting better that they realized, oh, but those symptoms were actually symptoms. That wasn't really normal. I didn't really need to feel that way. So many people, when they think about all the effort that we as missionaries make to encourage people to be healthy and whatever, I think there are many people who may listen to us and think, but I'm fine. But sometimes it's only when you start making some changes that you realize, oh, that was not actually fine. I can be finer than what I was. So you were mentioning traveling to Africa, and that your episode with the severe stomach pain was kind of a turning point for you. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that? And then maybe I can also jump in with some more questions about the traveling.
yeah. So yeah, severe stomach ache and not feeling well because you can actually live with a headache. Sad to say, but you can live with a headache. You can live with sore hands and
Mm,
pain that comes and go. But if it's a type of pain that just keeps on, going, and also some of the roads were quite rough that we were driving, and with all the shaking,
mm,
pain would it will just get worse. And
yeah.
then when we would get into a town and it would be we can sit in the wimpy or somewhere, then I would be better. But as soon as we got in the car driving again, it was definitely worse.
Mm, mm,
And but that was basically the major thing. But when we came back, then I started to have very sore feet, burning feet, very painful. I actually couldn't walk on my feet. I actually then went to my doctor, and I actually had to buy special shoes. It was very expensive.
mm,
I could just use that one pair of shoes, but at least I could walk with it. But then we were moving into a rental property with, as I told you, the cockroaches. And then I actually, because my husband was working, I was now spraying this poison around the house. And,
mm,
it just basically everything accumulated to, like, it was a big mess.
yeah, yeah.
Everything, all the poisons, everything that I've done wrong the past years, I think your body can actually tolerate to a certain point, and
Mm,
then it just all comes together, and then you're completely not well.
absolutely.
There was before that, there were also times when I can remember also just falling down once or twice without any reason. I would
Mm.
walk with a with a wedding dress, and then I would just fall, like for no obvious reason, like funny things. But yeah,
Yeah.
as you say, it is so true. Is that we so I don't know what it is, but it's almost like we're blinded for our symptoms.
Yeah. So, also just kind of thinking through what you're mentioning, am I correct in saying that at this stage, when you were right at the time period when you were traveling to Africa and the symptoms that you experienced at that stage, it was while you were still having your business. That was when you had the wedding dress business. Oh, no problem. That's not a problem. While you're finding that PowerPoint, I'm going to also point out one or two things that you mentioned here. Just sort of recapping on the symptoms that you mentioned that you have had. You were experiencing things like stomach pains, but you were also experiencing something like headaches. And you mentioned the headaches came and gone even before that. Now, with the headaches, maybe just taking the moment here to mention to our viewers as well, headaches is something that has become so common that it's almost implied if I ask a patient what their common symptoms are or some of the symptoms are that they experience, whether they are suffering from chronic disease, whether they have high blood pressure or diabetes or other problems, no matter what their issue is, you can almost be guaranteed that somebody's going to report having headaches. It's such a common thing for people to experience all the time.
Yes,
But
yes,
there again, constantly having headaches or having frequent headaches, even if they're not there every single day, having frequent headaches is not normal. It's a very big danger sign. It's a red light flashing to say that something isn't right. And a lot of people kind of just, my life is stressful. And that's, I haven't had enough sleep or I'm very stressed at work at the moment. And they kind of ascribe something like headaches to that,
yeah.
assuming that it's not really something to worry about and kind of assuming that it'll go away once their stress disappears. But even something as common as headaches is a very big red light for other problems going on. Now, before
Definitely,
we go any
definitely.
further, you had your wedding dress company at that stage, and I mean we've got a
Yeah,
picture of you when you were in that time period when you had that business. You did a lot of traveling, and part of that traveling, if I remember correctly, you mentioned to me that that traveling also involved going overseas sometimes to buy certain things that you needed for the business. Um,
yeah,
Traveling, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, traveling usually brings a couple of extra implications when it comes to a person's health, and that includes things like travel vaccines. In many countries, no matter where you go to, you have to take certain vaccines throughout the process. You need to take vaccines to go to this country, you have to have a different set of vaccines to that country, and so it goes on. Can you tell us a little bit about what that implication was for you? How did the traveling kind of affect not only the vaccines that you needed to take, but also other medications that you needed to use? Because you also mentioned having to take several courses of antibiotics for your stomach and things like that as well.
yeah. I just want to say prior to that, my mindset was always to go to the doctor when I was sick.
Mm,
Because I was in the wedding industry, you have to deliver a wedding dress. You can't be sick. That was my mindset. So if I did feel something coming, I would go to the doctor, get antibiotics. So I was on many courses of
mm,
antibiotics. So, I also went for my yearly checkups with my GP every year. But then the discussion came up when I traveled to China. So I asked my GP if it was a good idea to get. There was no compulsory vaccines. It was just which ones was good to take. So obviously, I took everything that I could take, and the
mm.
same happened when I went afterwards. I did the trek to Everest base camp. So then I also took some more,
Yeah,
and then I went and did Kilimanjaro, and I had some more, and then on our Africa trip that me and my husband did the sabbatical, then I took some more. So I actually ended up taking 10 travel vaccines. and the yellow fever was compulsory to go to Tanzania, but the rest it was not compulsory, but I just thought it was a very good idea for
Yeah.
prevention, for
And maybe
getting
just to
disease.
mention,
It was not something that I researched or really thought about. In my
yeah,
mind, it was like the antibiotics that I always took. It's just, it sounds like a good idea, and I must
yeah,
do it. I must say the rabies ones, when we did the sabbatical, the rabies vaccines, um, basically, I think a day or two before we actually left on that trip, we actually had friends that visited us, and she told me about this documentary that she saw about the rabies,
mm,
and she really, it did contribute to the fear. So then
yeah,
I said to my husband, no, but we must now, I'm so ashamed to say this, but then I had to convince him to take the rabies vaccine, and he really didn't want to take it.
mm,
But I was so fearful now of getting rabies, and because
yeah,
we're gonna have quite a rough trip, and so yeah, we ended up getting the first shot, and then because I think there was two others that we also had to take, so he actually had to give it to us on the
mm,
way.
yeah. And I think you pointed out something important there when it comes to following the protocols. And that is not that, you're doing this because you're trying to just fill your body with something random. You are convinced at that stage that is the best to do. And one of the reasons why we are
Definitely.
mentioning this as well is not because we're either trying to convince people to take these things or not to take them. That's not the point of the conversation. Um, I think what you also mentioned to me in our private discussions is that what one doesn't realize in the process is you're trying to protect yourself against certain diseases, but in the process you're kind of adding into your body and you're putting more things in and more things in, and very often people don't always understand the implications of adding on top of one thing added on top of another thing. We have a sort of analogy that we use in some of the health information sheets that we've made to distribute. And I always say to people, it's like a bucket under a dripping tap. You don't necessarily have that tap open at full force with the bucket, filling up and overflowing. You just need a dripping tap. But every time a little drop falls into that bucket, it adds and adds and adds. And all of these things can contribute. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, some more chemicals here, some more chemicals there. And slowly but surely the bucket is filling up. And that toxic load is filling up as we go. And the one thing that plays into that most people are unaware of is that there's a balance between how many toxins you can fill up and how many your body can actually clear out. And if that balance is off, if you're filling in toxins into the system faster than your body can clear them out, then you end up with major issues. Now, your symptoms that you had, for instance, your headaches and episodes where you suddenly fell without realizing that, and which was either neurological or muscular weakness, those things are very big red lights that actually say this bucket is filling up, something is overflowing here, something is going over the point where the body can compensate for it. So, tell us a little bit more about how the symptoms developed after that, because you also mentioned that things kind of built up a little bit.
Yeah, and as I say, always it's like, it's when you look back, then it's easier to see the things, because when it happens, you don't think it is, because some of the symptoms starts like maybe 6 months after you've had after you took the medicine. It's not
Mm,
immediately. It's like when someone smokes, for instance, you're not going to see anything go wrong after the first few cigarettes.
absolutely.
It's the same thing.
Mm,
So I actually, after the few shots, about 6 months later, I developed Bell's palsy. But remember, at that stage, I, there was no connection between what was
yeah,
going on.
yeah.
But I developed a Bell's palsy was one of the things that actually also happened to me. And then another thing, a couple of years later, also 6 months after I did the Mount Everest trek, I developed shingles in my mouth. That was
Mm,
very, very painful.
mm,
The other thing that I remember that also happened in that same time is that I actually had hair that fell out from at the back, but like a wig area, and my
mm,
hairdresser was actually very young, and that, of course my whole face was covered in skin pigmentation. But my hairdresser was so concerned because she said normally that amount of hair that actually falls out is that it's the same that with the trauma when you lose a loved one. You
mm,
know,
mm,
that's normally the thing that triggers something like that. So yeah,
yeah,
I was having all strange symptoms, but my hair grew back after I went to a dermatologist. I had an injection, and after 6 months, that was sorted. But
mm,
the shingles in my mouth, that was quite something that took about in total about 8 years.
sure,
That would flare up every
yeah,
time that you might just have a bit of a stressful.
mm-hmm.
That's why people relate it to stress, but there's the toxicity is there, and then the stress
Yes,
just
yeah,
triggers it. But what was very interesting after I followed the inflammatory diet, plant-based diet, that actually did get better, better, better. And today I can say I don't get it anymore. It's completely
incredible.
gone. I only experience a bit of stress. There's no
Yeah, yeah.
flare-ups anymore.
So maybe just to wrap that together and summarize, if I understand correctly, your symptoms included a number of different things, and they weren't all happening all at the same time. Now, with all of that
Yeah,
said, I mean, people saw the picture of you and in your dress shop, and for all intents and purposes, people from the outside would look and say, "But you look completely fine. You look well. You look
yeah,
healthy, and it doesn't really look like there's much going on in the background." But you're sitting with headaches that come and go all the time. You're sitting with occasional problems, gastrointestinal problems. You end up with things like hair loss, which again, it comes and it goes, and one kind of thinks, oh, it's just a coincidental thing. You had the skin
yeah,
implication as well with skin pigmentation, which I want to touch on that a little bit more because there's a big connection between having toxic overload in the system and skin issues. They often go hand in hand. And then, of
yeah,
course, in addition to that, the shingles is a very nice little telltale sign, if I can put it that way, that your immune system is involved in this whole process. Now,
yeah,
from a medical perspective, I will definitely not go as far as saying, "Well, I've got a spot diagnosis. This is actually what your diagnosis was," and that explains the whole thing. But what we do
yeah,
know is that when the immune system is exposed to lots of different things, when there's a toxicity level that keeps going up and maybe the body clears it a little bit and then it goes up again and the body is able to cope with it a little bit, but you keep getting these toxic spikes, in the end, your immune system becomes dysregulated, and a dysregulated immune system can do all sorts of strange things. It can stop responding to infections in an appropriate way, which means that when an infection comes into the body and the immune system is supposed to actually tackle it and kill it off, it doesn't really do that effectively. So then you can have these infections that linger and they keep coming back. Shingles is an example of that. At the same time, the immune system can actually start attacking your own cells and doing weird things. The skin sort of pigmentation or skin rashes or sometimes skin eruptions and all sorts of rashes can actually be one of the indications that the immune system is dysregulated. And then another thing that comes in and out of that as well is headaches that come and go and come and go and that don't necessarily follow much of a pattern. They often also tell us that the immune system is involved and that there's toxic dysregulation there. Um, and then there was another thing I think that you mentioned, which is often part of this picture, and that is hay fever, just having general allergies, where you start
yeah.
reacting to environmental things. You are sensitive to chemicals, sensitive to some things. Now, before you tell us a bit more about what you experienced, I want to just mention here that when people react to environmental things, that is not necessarily a bad thing. We do want the immune system to react. When I suddenly come into contact with lots of dust, I want my body to mount a response like a sneeze response. That doesn't mean that I have a dysregulated immune system. But when my body's overreacting to things that are not necessarily that harmful, like if there's a bit of dust and I start sneezing, but I continue sneezing for the next 24 hours after the dust has settled, that is a problem. Or when I have exposure to one small little thing and I have 3 days where I can't breathe out of my nose, that is a dysregulated immune system. Now, what was it that you experienced in terms of allergy symptoms?
Um, I was basically in primary school. From what I can remember, I always had severe sinus. My nose were always running. Even in high school, I was actually teased. I won't
Mm.
even repeat the name that I was called because my nose were always completely running, and I was always on these sprays and on medicine, and between grade 10 and 12, I was also for 2 years on injections to help me with the sinus.
Mm.
But then in my, later years, I still had sinus. But
Mm.
today
So
you
you
can
actually, I
hear,
mean, this was a pretty serious problem. You had, it wasn't just something that you lived with and never took any medication. You actually got
yeah,
injectable treatment for it for a period of time to try and get control of it.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. For 2 years, it was closer to each other, and then it got further apart.
Mm.
But I remember one day speaking to my GP. I was working already, and then I just basically asked, do I have to now forever use this medicine? The sprays and stuff for my nose. So she said yes. But I can also remember being tested in primary school, where they make these little
Mm.
scratches on your
Allergy
arms,
tests, yeah.
where they test for all the with the drops, and it was animals, it was dust, it was. I can remember also fish. I was very happy to be allergic to fish because I just hated that smell when my parents would buy fish and chips in those places. Ugh, I couldn't bear that. At
Mm.
least that was my thing. But what's interesting, dairy and those things didn't come up at all.
Yeah.
And now, now I know since I stopped using any dairy, and especially after I did the anti-inflammatory and cut out the gluten. Definitely, the gluten was the last piece of the puzzle for the
Mm.
sinus issue.
Mm.
I can really say I don't have a problem with my sinus anymore. I don't. I mean, obviously, I don't use anything also for it.
Yeah. Now, let's, if you can maybe give us a little bit more detail about what the main switch was that you had made, because I know that there were some progressive things that changed. There were certain things
Yeah.
that you started adapting or adjusting, but then you discovered the missionary protocol, which is a course that both of us also did. And just for those viewers who don't really know where this group is, it's a group of medical missionaries based in the United States. Um, and essentially, they've developed a protocol that follows a plant based diet, but specifically focuses on an anti inflammatory diet protocol where people are able to really sift out and cut out the things that contribute to immune dysregulation. Now, we're not going to go into too many technical details with this, but there's, as you also mentioned, sometimes you have to cut out the things, not only the things that you trigger or that you are known to be allergic to. There are certain things that you may not test positively for when they test whether you're allergic to it, such as dairy, but it may still contribute to toxicity that actually worsens your symptoms. So the MedMissionary protocol is all about cutting out the things that are known allergens, but also cutting out other things out of the diet that contribute to toxicity in order to build a diet that is really focused on anti-inflammatory foods that fight against inflammation, that help to regulate the immune system, building it up to respond appropriately and not to overreact and to calm down the frantic immune reactions, if you want to put it that way. So I know that you started following that protocol. Can you tell us more or less how long ago you began with that protocol, and what was if you had to summarize, what were the main things that you started implementing and what was the effect?
Yeah, just to go back to the 11 years ago when I started on my health journey, I was sitting with a serious stomach ache, and then someone just said to me, a friend, but use olive leaf oil and grapefruit seed oil. Because I
Mm.
actually went the medical route, they did colonoscopy, gastroscopy, barium scoop, they did all that, but they couldn't find anything serious wrong with me,
Mm.
or they couldn't find any fault. So then she said, use those oils. So I got it from a health shop, started using it, and within 3 days I was much better. So
Mm.
something then basically happened in my brain. I just clicked it with, I couldn't believe this simple thing actually made such a big difference.
Yeah.
But anyway, then I started going, and I'm not going to go too much into that, but the first health shop I went to, they promoted the blood group diet. So I went in that direction. I'm O positive, so I'm supposed to eat a lot of meat. Then I actually went after that. Then I got into baking these organic breads and free range meat, free range dairy. Then
Mm.
I went into keto, banting, but that I didn't like at all. I didn't do that for long. Then I went back to the free range meat, free range collagen. And then during the COVID time, my sister actually told me about this missionary course. So I was
Mm.
actually watching a sermon from Village SDA Church, and then Dr. Joyce was talking on there, and then I decided to do the course. And
Mm.
I must say, at that stage, I must say my health already improved a lot because
Mm.
I stopped eating any takeaways. I cut out all processed sugars. Although I was eating meat and dairy, I was cutting out,
A lot of the
making
junks.
everything from scratch. What was interesting, my skin pigmentation disappeared because I actually met one good functional medicine doctor, and I started using castor oil on it. Um, and then, but I think it was also because of the diet and, as you say, the toxicity. I cleaned up
Mm.
clean products, not using any poisons in and around the house, all those things wherever I
Mm.
could. I was like, it was so exciting for me, so interesting for me to learn all the new things and implement and make and bake, and like a new world opened up for me. But
Mm.
anyway,
Mm.
then when I did Met Missionary, I also, about 2 or 3 years prior to that, I actually did a year-long course for health coaching, to be a certified health coach. And because I was so passionate, and the thing is, if you experience all these changes for you, and I mean, it's so nice just to get out of bed, you're like fresh, and you're like
Yeah.
this battle bunny, that ad, you just jump like all day, and you can, it's just fantastic. But anyway, so by the time I did the Met Missionary, I actually did it to have an extra tool in my toolbox to
Mm.
help clients, because I thought I was already very, my health was in a very good
Improving. Yeah.
state. Yeah. But so I did the course, and I really fell in love with it. I was actually out of the church for many years, almost 20 years, and I really loved. It's such a loving group of people, and the thing is, I did find it a bit overwhelming initially.
Mm.
It's so interesting when the diet is actually very simple, but to go to simple is actually not easy. It was for me
Yeah.
really, I saw myself as a hardcore person, I could do any diet, and I was like bulletproof. And here I come, and this is now for me like, yo. So anyway, I did the course, baked some of the most awful breads, but I got through that. And then I would say the course was about 6 weeks. And I would say another month past that. Then I actually realized, because I was at that stage, I was having shooting pains in my mouth. I actually went, because I was curious, and I went through all these alternative doctors doing all funny tests. I actually also ended up with alternative dentists. I also had amalgams removed. And I must say, I'm not going to go into that now, but the thing is, I would not advise, although amalgams is very toxic, the mercury, I would say to people, hold on. Because when you're
Mm.
so toxic, first put your energy into a diet. If I could go back and redo it, I
Mm.
would say, keep the amalgams in your mouth. You've had it for many years. Yes, they are toxic, but it's also very toxic to take them out.
Yeah.
You feel
Yeah.
wonderful the first 2, 3 weeks. You go through a honeymoon phase, which they call. And then I really went through a very, very
Mm.
bad patch. But I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, I ended up then with a second alternative dentist, and she thought it was a good idea to open up all my fillings and put in new fillings again. Because she told me that you can't see it on an X-ray, which was actually not true. But that's
Mm.
also a long story. So I ended up with these shooting pains in my mouth. I think they call it neuralgia,
Mm.
and that was very bad. Actually, for 2 years, I felt that I could not really commit to work commitments because I didn't know when I was going to have this pain, because it comes for
Mm.
like a few seconds and then it disappears. And what was very
That's
interesting,
debilitating.
what was very interesting for me then, about a month or two after completing the medical missionary course and also implementing the diet, I realized, but it's actually better. But as you
Mm.
say, you don't actually realize. So even when I did the med missionary, you had to fill in like a feedback form, say how you experienced it. I
Mm.
thought I was already I didn't think anything improved, but even afterwards, as I say,
You
also with the
realize.
shingles in the mouth, that also came afterwards.
Mm,
And
mm,
definitely improvement with my sinuses. But even as I say, most of the benefits that I got out of the course actually came afterwards. But I think if I did it when I started my health journey, I would have obviously had much faster results because I actually went through years of trying different diets, spending
mm,
lots of money on alternative doctors, thousands of rands on supplements because everybody wants to sell you very expensive supplements.
yeah,
And what was interesting with missionary, they wanted us not to use supplements. So I said, okay, I'll put these supplements, I'll put all these pots, I'll put away, and I'll just
yeah,
do, as they say, the diet. So yeah, it was wonderful to be part of a support group because it's very difficult to change the diet on your own,
it is. Absolutely.
especially with, with addictions. I previously did a very strict protocol with a specific doctor, which I saw like every week, and that actually helped me to because I was definitely addicted to sugar, and that definitely helped me to get rid of sugar. But it was extremely strict. I was hungry all the time because I'm quite a big volume eater, and that's why I say even the missionary would be better for me. I can really everybody
Mm,
that I come across, I encourage people to do it. It's a fabulous course, fantastic group.
mm,
Afterwards, you stay part of the group. You can ask questions. You can put in a photo. Now I hurt my foot. What can I now do? And yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I don't. Although I've done previously natural remedy courses, they had different remedies. So really, I don't use any medicine now. I'm not
mm,
saying that I will never ever use medicine again because there might come a day where
mm,
I'm injured or I've poisoned myself over many years. I feel great, yes, but we
mm,
never know the extent of the damage that we actually caused.
yeah,
But the focus is I don't have headaches. I can't remember when last you don't get headaches when you eat
mm,
healthy, you live healthy, you
incredible.
know, your whole, I can just say your whole life change, your outlook
Mm.
change. It's very exciting. I can talk for like hours.
I can understand that, and you're pointing out something that is. I spoke to Duduzi not that long ago in the previous interview, and we spoke about the same thing that sometimes people think. I think sometimes people feel as though we are sort of sharing about our health things because we're trying to force our opinions onto people, but when you've seen the results that you see, it's hard not to be excited about it. When you've seen not only in yourself, but when you then get to know a whole bunch of other people in a community of people who are putting these things into practice and saying, well, one after the next of my symptoms are disappearing, it is difficult to ignore that. And of course, we get excited about that. So that I think is a good thing. There's two important points I just wanted to mention based on what you were also saying. Just to maybe just emphasize that to our viewers. The first thing is, like you also said, we are not advocating this protocol or this program or the healthy lifestyle aspect because we are saying, oh, we refuse to ever take any medication, or we're saying to everybody else, you must never ever take any medication. But it's important for people to understand that all medications have risk. All
Mm,
medications have known side effects. There's not one single medication that's listed in a drug textbook that says no side effects. It doesn't exist. They all have some kind of a negative impact on the body as well. And part of the reason why is because they all contribute to toxicity. They add a chemical load that is toxic to the body in some respects, which the body then has to clear out. So the more you're putting in, and if that is, if it's a bit of medication here and some vaccines there and some more antibiotics on another occasion, plus your cleaning chemicals and the pollution that you're breathing in, there are factors that we can't avoid. There are things that we can't control in our environments. But when you
mm,
can find alternatives for the things that are within your control, it is wonderful. That is a bonus. And that's sort of the way that I view it, is that whatever I can control, if I realize, well, I've got an infection that I need to treat, and there's actually some way that I can treat that infection without adding to toxicity in my body, then to me that is a win-win situation. Now, the other thing that you mentioned as well is about the process of detoxing, and I think this is a very key factor to just mention to our viewers that we don't advocate that people just do their own random thing to detox. Like what you said about when you take a whole bunch of fillings out of your, if you've had a lot of dental work done, and all of those fillings come out all at the same time, the process of actually removing some of those mercury-containing fillings also releases toxicity into your body. And doing a whole bunch of them all at the same time and not knowing how to detox at the same time so that you are actually helping your body clear those toxins out, it can be a really dangerous process and it can make you very sick. In the same sense, a lot of the other home detox remedies that people find or protocols that people get can be very, very dangerous if they are not combining certain things with treatments that actually help to wash out toxins from the body. And there's a lot of different strategies that we use for that. When we do home coaching with people, we strongly recommend that they use toxin binders like charcoal and bentonite clay and different things like that. But it's not really something that one wants to take lightly, because the detox process can make you very sick, because your body has to release toxins from where it is stored into the general circulation in order for that to be cleared. And sometimes what we end up releasing into the circulation can be an overload to the system. So people need to take caution with that. And I would actually recommend that people do their detox process sort of in conjunction with a health coach. You do health coaching, we do some health coaching. The Med Missionary Group has some excellent advice that is on their YouTube channel. So for those who are interested in looking at their channel, if you don't know their channel yet, by all means go and subscribe. They've got amazing health discussions, and they've also got many, I think they've got close to 100 different testimonies loaded onto their system at the moment on their YouTube channel of people who've done lifestyle changes and what the impact has been on their health. So an excellent resource to go and learn from. But again, just the emphasis here is, if people are interested in helping their bodies clear out from toxins, it's good to do that with an experienced health coach who has some knowledge about that. Now, with that being said, before we wrap up what we're discussing about today, I want to just kind of put this back into a nutshell and make sure that we all understand you had a number of different symptoms that came and went over a course of 11 years. And some of those things, the symptoms would come and they would disappear again, but you had these things that kept coming up. And towards the end, just before you did the Med Missionary course, you had already experienced some improvement, various kinds of improvements from
A
things
lot.
that you were struggling with. And this is a point at which I would like to pause and place the emphasis here, because people feel sometimes when they are making a diet change or they've made some lifestyle changes that, oh, some things have cleared up, so I'm good now. But following a full-on anti-inflammatory protocol or an anti-inflammatory lifestyle involves really going above and beyond, not just following a little bit of a diet that you've heard that works and some of your things have cleared up, but there are very few diet protocols that are truly anti-inflammatory. And the whole
Yeah.
food plant-based protocol, in particular the one that Med Missionary uses, is one of the few that I know of that I can honestly say is very, very much anti-inflammatory. It does not contain anything that will add to toxicity, and that is really what the aim should be. It's not just to make some healthy alternatives, and yes, every little bit helps. Every bit does make an improvement, but unless we actually cut out the toxins completely, we are still adding to that toxic load onto the body. And yeah, I've seen excellent results with this particular protocol. Now, with that being said, I want to take a few moments to just mention to people what you're doing at the moment. You have now, as you've rightfully mentioned, that excitement of seeing the changes in yourself and seeing the wonderful results is something that is hard to contain. So you have gone into full-time health coaching, and you are currently coaching people specifically with this anti-inflammatory protocol. So it is based, or it originated in the US. The group, the Med Missionary Group, is a group that people can go and follow their content for. But if they're looking for a health coach that follows this protocol, in your case, somebody who's actually lived the protocol for themselves, then they can definitely contact you, if I understand correctly. So we will share your contact details again towards the end. But we also wanted to just share with people some of the pictures of some of the foods and things that you've made. And to me, this is important because it's not about just putting you on the spot and flattering you with saying, oh, you make amazing food. We want to show people these pictures because a lot of people think that when you are following an anti-inflammatory diet that is only plant-based, that you end up cutting away so many things that you end up with ice cubes, and that's what your diet consists of. So we're showing people some of these things because the pictures that we're showing are meals and desserts that are made with whole foods that are only plant based. It contains no stimulants whatsoever. So there's no caffeine, there's no chocolate. You use alternatives like carob and some wonderful ingredients that are rich in nutrients but are completely void of the things that trigger inflammation. So, amongst other things as well, this protocol that you're coaching people with also cuts out the allergens. So, it stays away from the nuts that are typically more allergenic. And very often, it is important for people, especially in the initial phases, to cut out these allergens completely. And some things can be reintroduced later, but it's crucial for people in the major healing phases to actually stay away from things that add to immune dysregulation. And that is the protocol that you are guiding people through. So it is wheat free, but it contains ample nutrients. And I've never heard of anybody who follows this protocol and becomes nutrient deficient in the process. Especially, and maybe just to point that out as well, for those who have missed it, you mentioned that this protocol actually encourages people not to use any supplements. And the reason for that is not because we're saying that people don't need a boost, it's because we really want to teach people how to get the most from their foods. And this protocol is not just about using the ingredients that are most nutritious, but also eating them in a specific routine that maximizes the best absorption, the best digestion, with a gut that is not overworked, a gut that can actually function the way that it's designed to function. And just looking at these pictures, I am already remembering how much we enjoy making some of these things. And of course, not every day's meals are fancy meals, but it just shows that even on a restrictive protocol, if you want to put it that way, where you're staying away from some of the things that you previously thought should be part of your average diet, these foods can be incredibly tasty, incredibly attractive, and you can make really good food that your friends and family can enjoy as well. So we've only picked and kind of nitpicked a few of the pictures, but people can see the rest of your pictures as well. You share some of them on your Instagram channel, and I know you've got a Facebook page as well. So for those who are interested in going and having a look at some more, by all means, I would like to encourage them to go and have a look at those channels. And to to end off with, I want you to just emphasize for us again, how much are you spending at the moment on healthcare? How much are you spending at the moment on supplements? What is your monthly bill on remedies that you need to use for allergies and for controlling pain? The pain in your hands that was so debilitating that you could barely work. How much of that are you still experiencing?
No pain.
No
No pain.
pain, no big expenses. Now,
No. I'm just using B12 at the moment. So the thing is, but then you have it tested, and there's a reason why you would use a supplement. That's the same with.
mm,
So I would advise my clients also, even before I start with them, to have their vitamin D at least tested and B12,
yeah,
because those are the major ones. I mean, the rest you will probably get in as you go on with the diet, but the B12 is quite crucial. Even I that eat so clean and veggies from the garden, I was actually also surprised. But I think it could have
mm,
been because I actually went through a bit of a toxicity because I was still coloring my hair. Remember,
mm,
I told you about the pain I had then in my
mm,
forearms, but then
yeah,
I knew where it came from. But it was interesting that the B12 deficiency was also around the same time because I had it tested previously and there was
very
never a problem.
interesting.
Yeah. But the thing is, in the past, I would just randomly go, and it was not just, supplements. It was, you get so many things that you can use in little
Yeah,
pots. I don't know what you call it, but I mean, in the natural realm, there's so many things that they sell you
yeah,
that you think you have to use. But the way that we eat now, because it was actually one of the things my husband always used to say, but how are people going to afford this? I mean, when we were doing all some of the things. But now I understand, because now the way that we eat now, because I'm in the maintenance phase, so you would see those photos are because you go through a strict phase, so for 6 to 8 weeks, then the
mm,
maintenance phase, then you can add the healthy things again. But the food is actually much cheaper because beans and rice and those things, and you don't buy the junk anymore.
yeah,
And if you do eat out, it's You can decide where you eat. If I do have to go and eat out, then I research the place menu and I see, can they put something together for me? But this is the cheapest
Absolutely.
diet, if I can put it that way, from a whole journey, is the way that we eat now, and we just use the supplements that we
Yeah.
need to. And
I'm
the
very glad that
remedies
you're pointing that out.
sorry for interrupting you, but also
No
the
problem.
remedies are very cheap. You're talking about onions and garlic and lemon and it's not honey, charcoal, turmeric.
Exactly.
So the thing is, what people don't realize is sometimes you look at one. Say, for instance, you want to buy a healthy bread, like I've got a supplier that baked sprouted, say, buckwheat bread or millet and
Mm,
sorghum bread. Yes, if you look at the price of the bread is more expensive than the bread that you would buy, say, the square ones in the plastic
mm,
bags. But when you must compare the overall budget net. So you might here and there pay more for a separate item, but in
mm.
total, definitely you would pay less.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because that is a concern for many people, is that plant-based food is more expensive because they look at the price of nuts and they look at the price of certain seeds. But that's not the bulk of what you're eating. And overall, it most certainly balances out. We've also experienced that switching over to a whole food plant-based diet and eating an anti-inflammatory diet, if you also take in consideration how much money you used to spend on supplements, on remedies, on medications, on doctor's visits, you cannot even compare the amount of money that you save by switching to this kind of protocol. So I'm very glad about that. But I want to go back to the pictures about your garden, because it's something that we very strongly want to emphasize as part of the Health Rethink ministry, is that the food component is just one component. Food on its own is a big part of it, and yes, nutrition plays a massive role in helping to balance out immune dysregulation and treating autoimmune diseases and things like that. But the New Start principles form one whole, and they include spending time in sunshine. They include getting fresh air outside. They most certainly include, those principles. The whole thing falls flat if you're eating a really nutritious diet, but you never spend any time outside or you don't get any exercise. Those
Mm.
components work together to complement one another. And I've been impressed by your garden pictures, and not just because it's a beautiful garden, but as a reminder that gardening forms part of treatment when it comes to treating autoimmune disease. The actual time that you spend in your garden, the time that you spend growing food, your physical contact with plants, with the soil, you actually absorb certain nutrients in that way. You absorb even B12, you absorb when you're doing gardening. And yes, there are time periods where we have to be aware of extra stressors or maybe exposure to extra toxins or something like that that may change our requirements. But gardening in itself can be a tremendous adjunct to a healthy diet in terms of treating disease. So we're inspired by your garden. We're inspired by your pictures of your food, the delicious food that you've made. But most of all, yes, thank you.
Hello.
It's zoomy time outside when the sun starts setting. We are inspired by all of those aspects, but I am particularly inspired by your journey of how symptoms literally just started disappearing. And like you say, it's not even stuff that you always actively try and treat. It's symptoms that you suddenly realize that they have vanished into thin air. And that is really a wonderful experience to have. I want to encourage our viewers to look into not only the missionary protocol, but to look into the anti inflammatory diet concept, the New Start principles. Um, we really thank you for sharing with us. I'm so glad that you were able to join us again tonight. Our viewers who have questions, especially for those who might be watching this later on, I want to encourage them to write their comments in the comment section below for the videos, because we can always get these questions to you if there are questions specifically directed at you. And I know that you will be quite happy to try and answer people's questions and to get in touch with them if they want to get in touch with you. We're going to make sure that your contact details are on the screen, but also in the description box for those who don't want to pause the screen and take screenshots and things like that. So we will place all of those details in the descriptions. And yeah, again, just encouraging people to visit your site, to visit your Instagram page, to follow you on Facebook so that they can be inspired continually by the lovely pictures that you share, but also be inspired on their health journey, because that is really the most important part of this. Sun, thank you again for sharing your time with us. We hope that you're going to have a blessed weekend, and we'll definitely stay in touch with you going forward. Just to wrap up our video for this evening, I want to just remind our viewers again, we are still obviously a very small ministry, a very small channel, and the chances that somebody is going to randomly stumble across these videos just by themselves is very small because we don't, I'm pretty sure, don't have a lot of views just stumbling across our channel. So if you have been blessed by these testimonies, if you feel that they are valuable to you, or if you maybe know of other people who will be blessed by these testimonies, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and please do share them with other people because they are not going to discover these on their own just by chance. I also want to remind our viewers that subscribing to the YouTube channel and following us on Facebook will help them to just be aware. It'll make sure, or it'll help you to get notifications of the next upcoming testimonies that we will do as well, and some of the video content that we'll post in the future. We want to thank you again for watching this evening, and if you have questions about what we've shared, if you have personal health problems that you're hoping to get help for, make sure that you come into contact with us. Be sure to reach out to us either on email or through the contact pages on our websites. And if you would like, and if you're interested in the health coaching program that Susanne does, specifically with the anti-inflammatory missionary protocol, then make sure that you reach out to us so that we can provide appropriate referrals for you and bring you into contact with her as well, or reach her directly through her Facebook page. Thank you for watching. Make sure that you have a blessed weekend. Stay in touch, and we'll see you next time.